Ever wondered where the expression sweet FA, sweet Fanny Adams, or sweet come from? Stay tuned. Hi everyone, it's Paul here from Unusual Things. Now today's video brings you something different from the crime files. And the crime files is something, will be different videos I'm going to bring to you about different crimes that have taken place in the past. Today's crime is about the tale of Fanny Adams. Now Fanny Adams was a bright girl and was very well liked in her local area, in Alton, which is where I am now. She was born on the 30th of April 1859, and Alton had not really seen much previous crime during the 19th century. But on the afternoon of the 24th of August 1867, it was reported to be a hot and sunny day. It was around the afternoon that Fanny Adams, along with her sister Lizzie and her best friend Minnie Warner, asked her mother Harriet if they could go and play in the nearby flood meadows, which is where we are now. Having no objections and being pleased for the girls to leave her while she was getting on with the housework, Harriet agreed, and Fanny and the local children had often played in flood meadows here. It was just because it was nearby to their house. Hello. And there had been very little crime in Alton, so the girls were happy coming and playing down here. As they were walking towards flood meadows, there was a hop garden, so there was loads of beer hops all built around here. They met Frederick Baker, a 29-year-old solicitor's clerk. Now, he was wearing a frock coat, light coloured trousers and a tall hat. And Baker had moved into this area from his home in Guildford, and he was down here to work in Alton, probably about 12 months prior to seeing the girls. He was employed by a local solicitor, Mr. Clements, whose office was situated in Alton High Street, opposite the Swan Hotel. Now he approached the girls this afternoon, and Minnie and Lizzie, he gave them 3 halfpence to go and spend on sweets, and Fanny, he gave her a halfpenny. Now the girls had seen Baker before at church meetings, out and about, and were unconcerned about taking money from him. Baker then watched the girls run up and down as they played and ate blackberries that he had picked for them as well. And about an hour later or so, Lizzie and Minnie decided that they'd had enough and they opted to go home. Baker then approached Fanny and he asked her to accompany him to Sheldon, which is quite a distance away from here. Fanny refused to go along, and it was then that Baker abducted her and he carried her into the nearby hop garden. Now Lizzie and Minnie ran back to Townhouse Lane, straight to Martha Warner. Now, she ignored their story after they told her, and the girls carried on playing together, oblivious of Fanny's abduction. It was not until later on, about 5 p.m, that they made their way home for dinner. Mrs. Gardner, who also lived on Townhouse Lane, noticed Fanny's absence and asked the girls of her whereabouts. The children relayed what had occurred earlier on in that day. They told Mrs. Gardner that Fanny had been taken away by Baker. Mrs. Gardner then relayed that information to Fanny's mother, Harriet, and the 2 women set off in search for her. They met with Baker after going only a short distance near a gate separating the hop garden from Flood Meadow. According to the Hampshire Chronicle, Mrs. Gardner asked Baker what he had done with the child. Baker assured her that he often gave the money to children for buying sweets. Mrs. Gardner replied, "I've got a great mind to give you in to the police," to which Baker told her that she could do what she liked. Baker's position in the town as a solicitor's clerk initially deflected any suspicions the 2 women had. Both returned to their homes, believing Fanny was still out playing in one of the surrounding fields. Now, sometime between 7 and 8 p.m, Fanny had still not returned home, and this started to raise suspicions. It prompted Harriet and a group of neighbours to go and search for the missing child as the evening was settling down. The group began the search in the hollow, but to no success. In a nearby hop garden, however, labourer Thomas Gates, a veteran who partook in the famous Charge of the Light Brigade, found Fanny's head on 2 hop poles whilst he was tending the crops. Fanny's ear had been severed from her head, which had 2 large cuts from mouth to ear across the temple. Further investigation discovered the remains of the child. The head, arms and legs had all been separated from the trunk. 3 incisions on the left side of her chest and a deep cut on the left arm, dividing her muscles. Fanny's forearm was cut off at the elbow, and her left leg nearly severed off at the hip joint, with her left foot cut off at the ankle point, and her right leg was torn from the trunk, and the whole contents of her pelvis and chest were completely removed. 5 further incisions had been made in her liver, her heart had been cut out, both of her eyes were cut out and found in the nearby River Wey. Overwhelmed with grief, Harriet collapsed, and on her way to inform her husband, who was playing cricket at the time, and word had already got to him, and when George was told, he came home. He took out his loaded shotgun and set out to go and find the culprit who did this, but neighbours stopped him, and instead they sat with him throughout the whole next day, and then hundreds of people visited the hop garden to help collect Fanny's scattered remains. Police tried unsuccessfully to find the murder weapons, as they suspected small knives were used to commit the crime. It is likely that the crowd of searchers had inadvertently trampled down any clues that were left on the ground. They did, however, recover all of Fanny's cut clothing, which was scattered around the field, with the exception of her hat. Most of Fanny's body parts were collected on that day, but an arm, a foot, and some of her intestines were never found until the next morning. One foot was still in its shoe, and clutched in one of her hands was the 2 halfpence that Baker had given Fanny. Fanny's body parts were sewn together only yards away from her home. From there, officers of Hampshire Constabulary took them to the local police station. A stone which had flesh on it and hair that was sticking to it was handed in to the police as evidence, and they thought it may have been the actual murder weapon. That evening, Police Superintendent William Shaney hurried from the police station to Flood Meadow, where he was met by several other people who then led him to the Leven bottle. Now, upon arrival, the proprietor of the house handed Shaney a bundle labelled portions of a child, and with the help of some of his officers, he organised a search to trace all the missing body parts. Hearing that Baker had been seen with the children prior to Fanny's disappearance, Shaney retraced his steps through the town and located Baker's place of work. Arriving at the solicitor's office roughly around 9 p.m, he found Baker still at work. An hour later than usual, Baker protested his claims of innocence, and despite being informed that he was the only suspect, Shaney had no alternative but to arrest Baker on suspicion of murder. Now, by this time, a large agitated crowd had gathered outside the solicitor's office, forcing the police to smuggle Baker out the back door in the fear that the mob were going to kill him. Now, when searched at the police station, Baker was found to be in possession of 2 unstained small knives. Spots of blood were observed within both wristbands of the shirt that he was wearing, and his trousers had been soaked to conceal the bloodstains. Now, after being questioned about his appearance, Baker responded, "Well, I don't see a scratch or a cut on my hands to account for the blood." Baker's conduct during this interrogation was described as cool and collected. But sometime after the arrest, Shaney backtracked to Baker's desk in the solicitor's office and discovered a diary among some small legal papers in there. And an entry had been made. Saturday, 24th of August, 1867. Killed a young girl. It was fine and hot. The Hampshire Chronicle reported that the hop garden had been cleared on the 21st of September, but nothing connected with the murder had been found. It also added that Baker remained completely unfazed with the murder and did not exhibit any symptoms of insanity or remorse. Further confusion was added when Baker stated that he was intoxicated after seeing the children. All the evidence and witnesses rejected his claim, and Baker was transferred to Winchester Prison on the 19th of October. Now, the trial took place at Winchester on the 5th of December, and the defence contested Minnie's identification of Baker and claimed that the knives that were found were too small for that sort of crime anyway. Now, they also argued that insanity, because Baker's father had been violent and a cousin had been in the asylum, his sister had died of brain fever, and he himself had attempted suicide. It was after a love affair that he had. But the defence also argued that the diary entry was typical of the epileptic or the formal way of the entry that the defendant used, and that the absence of a comma after the word killed did not render the entry a confession. How bonkers. Justice Mello invited the jury to consider a verdict of not responsible by reason of insanity, and they returned a guilty verdict after just 15 minutes on the 24th of December. Baker was hung outside Winchester Prison, and the crime had become notorious, and a crowd of 5,000 people attended the execution. This was the last public execution held at that prison. Now, before his death, Baker wrote to the Adamses expressing his sorrow for what he had done. In an unguarded hour and seeking their forgivenesses, following his execution, Baker's death mask was made, and the following year his full figure was placed at an exhibit in the Chamber of Horrors, Madame Tussauds, and that's the waxworks place in London. Now, I just met a lovely lady who is a local here, and she was telling me that she lives literally 3 doors along from where Fanny Adams lived, but sadly, and rightly so, she wouldn't go on camera, which is fair enough. But it was really interesting talking to her and having a chat. You know, she was telling me about the old layout of the lands and the water meadows and how it used to look and things like that. So it's really interesting. Anyway, let's get back to continuing where we were. In 1869, new rations of tinned mutton were introduced for the British seamen, and they were unimpressed by it. So that's where sweet FA comes from. The sailors used to get small tins of mutton stew, and because it had nothing in there, they used to say it was like the chopped up remains of Fanny Adams. So when they got their food, they would say there's sweet FA in there. And then of course, that's stuck and it's gone down through the ages, sweet Fanny Adams. And then of course, the common term that people use, sweet, I won't swear, or, you know, F4. Make sure you like and subscribe to the video. Please give us a thumbs up or leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think of the crime files. It's going to be something that I'm going to continue to do. Any unusual crimes or things that, you know, maybe aren't in the public domain so much, look into them. If you know of any sort of unusual stories or crimes that have happened over the years, and you know, it's not anything that's really in the mainstream, or has been and it's been forgotten about, then get in contact with me, leave me a comment down below, and we will go and have a look. We? Who's we? Me and you. That's who. Us together. I will take you on that journey. I could be wrong, I could be right, as the song once sung. I think John Lydon sung that, didn't he? I could be wrong, I could be right. Right, okay. I think this is, yeah, Fanny Adams' grave here. Oh, bless, someone's left some flowers, look. The little toy on top. Okay, let's have a look, let's have a read. To the memory of Fanny Adams, aged 8 years and 4 months, who was cruelly murdered on Saturday, August the 24th, 1867. Fear not them which kill the body, but are not able to kill the soul, but rather fear him which is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. Matthew 10:28. The stone was erected by the voluntary subscription. Okay, so there's Fanny Adams' headstone there, and we hear, you know, when we hear about it on the news these days, everyone cringes. A child gets abducted, you know, the first thing that goes through your mind is, oh, please be returned safely. These days we have the benefit of the news, the television, the radio, social media, and getting word out really quick. We have the benefit of CCTV, cameras everywhere, people with cameras, phones, dash cameras. The chances are these days someone will see something. That poor girl never stood a chance. Baker, a solicitor's clerk, because he couldn't bribe her with some sweets, just took her, picked her up, just carried her off. It's bad enough when you see the news these days and you wonder what the parents go through. But in them days where there was no communication at all, what goes through their mind? What did that poor girl's, and her sister who basically saw it, and her parents, what goes through? No wonder the dad grabbed his shotgun and wanted to go out and kill him. But it was only because of the neighbours that stopped him, otherwise he would have probably lost his life too, or been put in prison for the rest of his life. For a young girl to go through what she went through as well, and the conditions in which they found her body parts, you can't fathom it, you really can't. Let's hope now that she's at peace. God bless you, Fanny. God bless you. You know, 8 years old, her whole life ahead of her, and taken by some, I won't swear, but some absolute arsehat of a guy who thinks that he can go and do that. Makes you sick. Anyway. It's horrible. It's an 8-year-old girl. And it doesn't matter that it was a long time ago, it still happened. And when people say sweet Fanny Adams, I find that an insult now. Because you're degrading what that little girl's body was worth. Now I know back in them times, sailors would have said it probably, I don't know, to keep their morale up or whatever, I don't know. But look deep into the meaning of it. Sweet F.A., sweet Fanny Adams. They're referring to her body parts. And that's one expression or terminology that I will never use again. And, it's up to you. Free choice, free will. But when you look into the meaning of it, it doesn't sit comfortable with me. Anyway, that's it for our first crime files. Let me know what you think. Leave some comments down below. If you've got any places near you which you think would be a good one to put on the crime files, get in contact with me. Leave me a message in the comment down below, and then I'll look into whether or not it's worth investigating and coming out and making a video on it. But yeah, keep subscribing and keep hitting the like button. Help the channel grow. The more it grows, obviously the more I can go and do these sorts of things for you. That was tough. Anyway, let's leave Alton Cemetery behind now, shall we? And let's hope Fanny's resting in peace, bless her. See you on the next one. Take care.